How much money does it take to buy an entire city block in London? Or to make Paris Saint-Germain one of the most expensive football clubs in history? For Middle Eastern billionaires, those are not challenges. They are pastimes. Some of them own islands you'll never find on Google Maps. Others sit on fortunes larger than the GDP of entire countries. And a few control the invisible pipelines that decide how much you pay at the gas pump tomorrow morning. Their lives look like something out of a modern fairy tale. Supercars parked under palaces, art collections worth billions, and skyscrapers rising out of what was once empty desert. But these fortunes did not simply appear overnight. They were forged from oil, expanded through global investments, and protected by secrecy. And that secrecy hides something even more fascinating: rivalries between royal cousins, shadow empires that thrive under sanctions, and outsider families who became billionaires without a single drop of oil. Because the story of Middle Eastern billionaires isn't just about wealth, it's about power, politics, and secrets the world was never meant to see. The deserts of the Middle East once looked endless, barren, almost untouched by time. Bedouin tribes moved with their camels, trading spices, dates, and pearls. Wealth was measured not in billions, but in livestock, water wells, and control of caravan routes. Then, in the early 20th century, something changed. Drillers struck black liquid under the sands of Persia in 1908. And soon after, Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, and Iraq discovered the same hidden ocean of wealth. What lay beneath the desert was more than oil. It was a future currency that the entire world would depend on. Overnight, once modest rulers became custodians of an energy source that could power empires, fund armies, and buy influence far beyond their borders. The House of Saud in Saudi Arabia, the Al Saba in Kuwait, and later the Al Nahyan in Abu Dhabi saw their fortunes swell beyond imagination. These weren't billionaires as we know them today. They were monarchs whose private wealth was indistinguishable from the wealth of their nations. Oil didn't just fill their coffers, it rewrote their identities. Tribes became kingdoms. Kingdoms became dynasties. And those dynasties began building palaces, creating sovereign wealth funds, and quietly buying stakes in Western banks, airlines, and real estate. But oil money was volatile. It could vanish as quickly as it appeared, tied to global demand and political turbulence. That's why these early dynasties learned one crucial lesson. To survive, they couldn't simply sit on oil wells. They had to transform black gold into lasting power. And it was in that transformation, when oil money became global money, that Middle Eastern billionaires began to rise not just as rulers of nations, but as architects of worldwide influence. When most people imagine billionaires, they think of individuals: Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, Warren Buffett. In the Middle East, the scale is different. Here, wealth often belongs to entire families, sometimes to whole royal houses. And their fortunes don't come from a single company. They come from a system where personal inheritance, government revenue, and sovereign wealth blur into one colossal empire. Take Saudi Arabia. The House of Saud rules a nation where oil reserves are among the largest in the world. The line between the family's fortune and the state's treasury is almost impossible to draw. At one point, estimates suggested the extended royal family could command wealth well over $1 trillion. That means the princes of Saudi Arabia don't just live lavishly. They can bankroll entire industries, reshape cities, and tilt the global balance of energy with a single announcement. Or look at Qatar's Al Thani family. They transformed their small, gas-rich state into one of the world's most influential investment powerhouses. Their fund, Qatar Investment Authority, holds skyscrapers in London, luxury hotels in Paris, and even owns the French football giant Paris Saint-Germain. To the public, it looks like smart business, but behind it lies a family strategy. Use wealth to secure influence far beyond their borders, turning culture and sports into tools of soft power. Meanwhile, in the United Arab Emirates, the Al Nahyan rulers of Abu Dhabi have positioned themselves as both monarchs and CEOs. Their sovereign wealth fund, Abu Dhabi Investment Authority, manages hundreds of billions, making it one of the largest in the world. Dubai's Al Maktoum family, on the other hand, reimagined their desert city into a global hub of luxury and finance, where skyscrapers, islands, and malls became symbols of a kingdom run with corporate ambition. In these royal houses, money isn't just about lifestyle, it's about control. They invest in media to shape narratives, in banks to influence markets, and in real estate to cement prestige in the capitals of the West. What looks like billionaire indulgence is, in truth, empire building. But even within palaces, not all is calm. Cousins compete for succession. Branches of families argue over strategy. And while some royals chase futuristic cities like Neom in Saudi Arabia, others prefer traditional wealth, gold, land, and oil. These rivalries within royal dynasties are fascinating enough. But what happens when billionaires rise outside the palaces with no royal blood at all? That is where the story takes an even sharper turn. Not every Middle Eastern billionaire is crowned in gold or wrapped in royal lineage. Some built their empires in silence, away from cameras, away from headlines. These are the shadow billionaires, men whose names rarely appear on rich lists, but whose wealth flows like underground rivers, moving through shell companies, offshore accounts, and hidden vaults. In Iran, decades of sanctions created an entire class of businessmen who became experts at bending the rules of global finance. When Western powers thought they had sealed every exit, these moguls built new doors. Oil shipments disappeared from maps, only to reappear in faraway ports under different flags. Payments were routed through Dubai, then Turkey, then Switzerland. Each transaction a puzzle piece, designed to confuse anyone watching too closely. The fortunes they built didn't just survive sanctions, they thrived on them. Syria tells another story. Civil unrest and sanctions forced many of the country's wealthiest families to shift their assets abroad. Banking networks in Lebanon, real estate in Dubai, and offshore companies in Cyprus became lifelines. Their names became whispers in corridors of power, never officially listed, yet always felt. And then there are the Lebanese financiers, long known as the bankers of the Arab world. From Beirut to Paris to Geneva, they mastered the art of moving money across borders, often serving as the middlemen for both royals and outcasts. Their influence doesn't always make front-page news, but when billion-dollar transfers cross the globe, chances are one of these shadow players is involved. Unlike the royals, these billionaires don't flaunt mega yachts or gold-plated palaces. Their luxury is anonymity. Their power lies in being invisible. To many, they're ghosts, never seen but always present when the money moves. And yet, as secretive as these shadow moguls are, there's another group that surprises outsiders even more. Families with no oil, no palaces, and no royal titles, yet they've managed to carve out billionaire empires right in the heart of the Gulf.
Behind closed doors, fortunes grow without a single face attached.
Not every Middle Eastern billionaire was born into a palace or a pipeline. Some arrived with little more than ambition, sharp instincts, and a willingness to take risks in the harsh desert markets. Over the decades, these outsiders, many from India, Lebanon, and Palestine, built fortunes so vast that today they stand shoulder to shoulder with royals. In Dubai, Indian entrepreneurs transformed the city into a hub of trade and retail. Families like the Jeshans, the Al Ghurairs, and the Mickey Jagtianis of Landmark Group created shopping empires where millions now buy everything from fast fashion to electronics. To the casual shopper, it's just another mall. But behind the glass storefronts lies a network of businesses stretching from the Gulf to Asia to Europe. These retail barons control supply chains, shipping routes, and entire lifestyle sectors in a region where shopping is both leisure and culture. Palestinian and Lebanese families, too, found their place in finance and real estate. With deep connections to trade networks and banking systems, they became the silent partners behind Gulf construction booms, luxury towers, and financial institutions. Some of Dubai's most iconic skyscrapers, some of Abu Dhabi's most ambitious projects, bear the fingerprints of families whose names are rarely on billboards but always on the contracts. For these outsiders, success didn't just mean wealth, it meant trust. In regions where loyalty and reputation carry as much weight as money, they built credibility by delivering results, managing risk, and weaving themselves into the fabric of Gulf society. Over time, they became indispensable. The irony? Many of these billionaires never touched oil. Their fortunes grew from ports, shipping lanes, shopping complexes, and finance. They proved that, in a land defined by petroleum, there was another kind of gold to be mined: trade itself. And yet, while these outsiders built their empires brick by brick, the royals and shadow moguls discovered another frontier, a softer, quieter form of power. Not pipelines, not skyscrapers, but something far more universal: culture. For Middle Eastern billionaires, wealth was never the endgame. Influence was. And one of the fastest ways to wield influence wasn't through tanks or pipelines, but through something softer, more seductive: culture. Take football. To fans, Paris Saint-Germain is just a club. To Qatar's Al Thani family, it is a stage, broadcasting their nation's image to millions across Europe every week. The Abu Dhabi Royals followed the same script with Manchester City, transforming the club into a global powerhouse. What looked like sports investment was really something else: branding a nation, winning hearts, and rewriting perceptions of the Gulf from oil-rich deserts to modern cosmopolitan powers. Art became another battlefield. In 2011, Qatar stunned the world by purchasing Paul Cézanne's The Card Players for over $250 million at the time, the highest price ever paid for a painting. That single transaction announced something no press release could. Qatar wasn't just rich. It was a cultural superpower, building museums to rival the Louvre and the Met. Billionaire rulers weren't buying canvases. They were buying a seat at the global table of taste and prestige. And then there's media. Saudi Arabia has invested billions into global networks, from satellite TV to Hollywood production companies. Controlling the narrative meant more than entertainment. It meant shaping how the world sees them. A scandal could be softened, an achievement amplified, an image polished until it gleamed. This cultural strategy worked like invisible currency. Owning a football club could win loyalty in London pubs. Funding a museum wing could buy credibility in Paris. A stake in Hollywood could make sure the stories told on screen aligned, subtly, with the interests of Gulf billionaires. For ordinary viewers, it looked like generosity, sponsorship, or fandom. For the billionaires behind it, it was calculated soft power. But while royals and moguls mastered this art of influence, another force was rising. A new generation of heirs. Young, ambitious, and often educated abroad, they face a challenge even money can't erase: how to carry billion-dollar legacies into a future that demands reinvention. For decades, Middle Eastern billionaires built their fortunes on oil, trade, and influence. But a new chapter is being written by their heirs: princes, princesses, and young moguls raised in a world where Instagram followers matter as much as barrels of crude. Many of them were educated in London, New York, or Geneva. They grew up in a blur of private jets and elite universities, absorbing Western business models, while still tied to their family's traditions. Some are stepping back into the Gulf to lead projects that look less like kingdoms and more like science fiction. Cities powered by clean energy, artificial intelligence hubs, space exploration ventures. Saudi Arabia's Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman pushes Neom, a futuristic megacity in the desert. Qatar's younger Al Thani heirs explore investments in biotech and green energy. In Dubai, the Al Maktoum family embraces blockchain and smart city infrastructure. But their inheritance is more than just money, it is expectation. Billions of dollars come with billions of eyes. Will they maintain the empires built by their fathers and grandfathers? Or will shifting politics, climate change, and a world moving away from fossil fuels unravel dynasties that once seemed untouchable? The young heirs face the paradox. To keep their power, they must embrace change. To preserve their wealth, they must take risks. For every glittering project unveiled, there are critics whispering, "Is this vision or is it vanity?" And in that question lies the future of Middle Eastern billionaires. Because the legacies they build today will decide whether tomorrow's Gulf is remembered as a fading empire of oil or the birthplace of the world's next great transformation. A century ago, the desert was silent. Tribes lived by trade and tradition, with little hint of the storms that lay beneath their feet. Then came oil. And with it, the rise of billionaires whose fortunes reshaped the Middle East and rippled across the globe. From Saudi palaces to Dubai skyscrapers, from Qatari art collections to secret Iranian networks. Middle Eastern billionaires have written a story of power unlike any other. Their wealth is not just measured in numbers, but in influence. Who owns the city's skylines? Who tells the world stories? Who decides what tomorrow looks like? But behind the glitter, the story is fragile. Oil is finite. Politics shift. Generations change. And the future, like the desert itself, remains uncertain, shaped by winds no one can fully control. Yet one thing is undeniable. Few places on Earth have turned wealth into power with such speed, scale, and ambition. The Middle East's billionaires are not just rich. They are custodians of an empire that straddles the line between tradition and modernity, secrecy and spectacle, survival and vision. As the sun sets on the desert and lights rise from palaces, towers, and stadiums, one truth lingers. The story of Middle Eastern billionaires is far from finished. Their fortunes are still growing, their influence still spreading, and their next chapter, whatever it may be, will echo across the world.